Welcome to Exploring the Mystical Side of Life with your host, Linda Lang.
Hi, this is Linda Lang from thoughtchange.com, and today we are talking about how our thoughts impact our life. I have Doug Vermeeren here, who is the director and producer of the movie How Thoughts Become Things. And he has had a lot of experience while creating his movie and, of course, in his life on how to create those internal shifts to actually create the life that you want to live. So I would like to introduce you to Doug. Welcome, Doug.
Thanks for having me.
This reminds me of The Secret. I'm sure all of our listeners have watched that. And when it became public, we were all really excited in the spiritual community that this was becoming more mainstream. And yet, there was some things missing. Can you tell me what inspired you to create this movie?
Thank you. I think for me, the interesting thing is I think we have to go back a little further. This is our fourth movie, by the way, the fourth one that I've done. But for me, what happened when I was about 19, I had really no experience with personal development, no experience with any of the law of attraction stuff or anything. But when I was 19, somebody gave me the book Think and Grow Rich. And so I read it, and it was my real first kind of introduction to the power of thought. And kind of what happened is I actually got a little jealous of Napoleon Hill. Not only did my thinking shift, but I saw that we really literally become like the five people we spend the most time with. And so I decided to go out and do interviews like what Napoleon Hill had done to write that book, Think and Grow Rich and Laws of Success and so forth. And what he did, for those of you familiar with that, he went out and he interviewed a lot of the world's top achievers, people like Thomas Edison and Henry Ford and the Rockefellers. So I actually went out and I did the same. So I interviewed more than 400 of the world's top achievers. I'm now up to about 700, I might add. And I got to everybody from, the founders of FedEx to Nike to Reebok, the Avita Group, Disney, Christian Dior, etc. And when I got to these people, I noticed that my thinking was starting to change. And I noticed that, I'd come from this family who sort of was like a paycheck to paycheck, living in the rat race, this kind of an idea, to suddenly, I was able to start thinking more like these multimillionaires and billionaires that I'd surrounded myself with. And a lot of things changed in my life. Well, obviously my finances did, but everything really did. And so it was funny because I wanted to make a movie about that at that time and share some of these interviews. But I went to a couple of different distributors and they all said, no, we don't know where to put this movie. Like, does it belong as a how-to? Is it is it a documentary? Where does it fit? And so they kept turning me down until actually two movies made the difference for me. It was What the Bleep, Do We Know, and The Secret. And as soon as those movies started to really do well, I had people then knocking on my door saying, would you like to now do your movie? And so I did my first movie, The Opus, in 2008. Features many of the cast from The Secret. And it really talks about how to take the vision of what you want to create and how to turn it into a workable plan, ultimately performance. And then since that time, we've done, like I said, 3 other movies. Next, we did The Gratitude Experiment to talk about the power of gratitude. Then we did The Treasure Map, which deals about, the mindset around abundance. And now here we are with what I believe is our strongest movie, How Thoughts Become Things. And the thing that's kind of interesting is up until now, 3 of my movies have made it into the top 10 personal development films. This is the 4th one, and this one is already outselling The Secret 3-1, which is incredible. So the distributors are thinking it's going to replace The Secret as the all-time most important personal development film ever made. So yeah, that's the journey. That's what we're doing. That's where we're at.
So Doug, you said 2 very interesting things that I'd like to jump into. The first is the 5 people concept.
Yeah. Well, yeah, certainly. And I think there's some misunderstandings around that too. Number one, it's the 5 people we spend the most time with, not spent, right? Like spent is past tense. And most of us, in fact, actually blame our previous programming. And we oftentimes lean on that and say, well, I was raised in a challenging family. I was raised in a difficult situation. And therefore, this is who I am. And I can't help but act like my parents. Or I can't, this is kind of who I am. But the truth is we've got to be careful with that because we are actually even being programmed right now. In fact, even as you're listening to this interview, you're being programmed. And we're bringing ideas and concepts and beliefs directly, our values directly in at any given time. So this idea to recognize that we actually have more power in the present than we have in the past, if we'll recognize that, if we'll embrace it, if we'll have awareness, and we'll also make a choice. And I think this idea also of the 5 people that we spend the most time with, like one of the big questions that we get a lot, that I've been getting a lot because of this film, is what is the fastest way to level up my thinking? If I'm not, appreciative of what's going on and it's not working for me, what's the first thing that I really can do? And that's, quite frankly, to change the things that are influencing you. Because most thoughts do arrive in a reactive state, right? Meaning that we respond to our environment, and that's what really generates and creates our thought. Unless we have some sort of trigger, the thoughts really won't arrive. But here's the thing that most people don't understand with thought, is it's not just a positive thought that arrives. Thoughts always actually arrive in pairs. So let's say, for example, you want to do something really amazing and you feel inspired, and here's this idea. Let's just say start a business, right? Well, you've got this idea that's exciting. Let's start a business. And right behind it is the negative thought that says, well, maybe not, right? You're not good enough. You don't know enough. You don't have the resources. You don't have the money, etc. So these 2 thoughts actually descend into your programming. And so if you are currently surrounding yourself with people who are like, you're right, there's no entrepreneurs here, there's no hope, you can't do it, etc. When those 2 thoughts land, well, the negative one will immediately have more power because it lands in an environment that's unsupportive. However, if the opposite is true and you are with a really good group of people who believe, that entrepreneurship is the way to do it, that there's support, that that you're going to succeed, when it lands, then that one's the one that's going to be in a higher level of plane. So we've got to understand that our environment really is sort of, let's call it the nest, if you will, where your thoughts will arrive. And so we really can level up ourselves and, really our thoughts by just being selective about what we surround ourselves with. And by the way, I might mention that's not just people, that's all things in our environment. In fact, I love what Marie Diamond said in our film. She said that our surroundings are kind of like a 3-dimensional vision board. And I think a lot of times we're very careless about what we bring into environment, careless where we spend our time, whether sometimes it's in negative social media or regular negative media or the television we watch or whatever, where we spend our time. And so we've got to be very selective to recognize that we're building our own programming. And most people aren't making deliberate choices. They're just sort of what comes is what we'll accept. And that's not a great way to create your destiny.
Definitely not. And I would suspect that having a lot of clutter or chaotic environment also creates some chaos on the inside as well.
I think it does too. And it's funny because I've seen studies on both ways. I've seen people say that geniuses are really messy and all that kind of stuff. And then I've seen others that say, no, a pristine, orderly, situation is important, and you can't organize your life until you organize your immediate situation, or you can't add to it until it's organized. I'm of the opinion, kind of studying it myself, I think that there is truth to that, but I also think that there are times to be chaotic and there are times to be organized. And I know that, like one of the big things that's really interesting, and we don't talk about this in the movie, is there's different modes of thinking. And, I guess the easy way to explain it, like a lot of, here, I've got a whiteboard behind me, so this helps. So we've really got 3 kinds of thinking that our brain kind of moves through when it comes to the creative process. And what I've noticed is that pop culture and a lot of the gurus out there have this wrong. The M stands for meditation. And so they often say that, listen, if you're undergoing stress or maybe you've lost a loved one, or maybe you're going through divorce or a bankruptcy or something, it's good to meditate because that'll give you power back. And that's actually not true. If you've ever met somebody who's lost a loved one, the worst thing they can do is sit there and think about it. Or going through divorce, that's the worst thing they can do. But if you look here, this next one here is called creative. But we'll talk about this one for a minute. It's called constructive. When we are in a negative state of mind, the best thing that we can do is actually get busy and forget ourselves, to be constructive. In fact, oftentimes, if we even do something for other people, we'll find that we have a more positive return to us. And so you kind of think about it like this, like constructive is when your cup of water is full to the brim, right? And the thing that empties it is getting busy. We got to get busy doing stuff and take action and initiative. That's what empties the cup, where at that point, then we can meditate. And then when we are meditating, it's interesting, and I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but when you sit still, say, for example, in the shower, and you're, just meditating and you open ideas, that's when your cup gets full and you start in a creative mode. and you start to think of possibilities for yourself. So it's interesting if we just take a moment and recognize this interesting little pattern here, we'll see that a lot of what the pop culture gurus that are out there are telling us is completely incorrect. We need to really understand that if we're overwhelmed, we need to get busy and get involved in activities that will empty our cup. And then when it's empty, well, we can relax there until the creativity starts to fill it up again, and it just performs that cycle. So we've just got to understand to take care of ourselves in that way, right?
Oh, great tip, Doug. Let's just really quickly go back to the 5 people, because I think that sometimes people think they're positive and maybe they're not quite so positive, or they think their friends or their colleagues that they spend time with are positive.
I like kind of where you're going with this, and I also want to dispel a rumor here. So here's the deal, is I've now interviewed 400 of the world's top achievers. As you can imagine, there's some very common things that start to appear. In fact, even after the first 50, let alone 400, right? So there's some common things. So number one of the things that the gurus have wrong, like totally wrong, is they tell you you need to eliminate toxic people, right? Now, I would agree you need to eliminate abusers, but that's a different category than toxic. You see, most times people, because of their ego, they label certain people as toxic, right? But they're not. So there's really 2 kinds of toxic people. It's important we understand this. The first is what we call a complainer. Now, a complainer never has solutions. They never really say anything positive. But here's the deal. Once you have clarity on what you want and what your mission is, you can build boundaries. So you don't have to subscribe or like or follow or engage with a complainer. But you do need to learn how to manage them. And the interesting thing is, when I was listening to the top achievers and learning from them, they don't run from problems. They actually expand who they are to be able to rise above problems. So we're not going to eliminate that complainer. We're just going to build a boundary. But the other kind of toxic person is what we call critic. And the interesting thing about a critic is a critic actually generally does come with solutions. They often do present facts. They have things that you need to hear. They're just not always a good communicator. A good example would be like when I was a teenager, I had people who said, don't you do this on, like go out and party with all these kids, or don't you do that. And now, I didn't like to hear that, right? Get your homework done, right? I didn't like to hear that, but it was necessary for me to hear. And the ego is one of the biggest enemies, and it immediately limits us because we label people as toxic, and we don't think we need to listen to someone that's trying to keep us safe, right? So just to kind of finish on this idea here, what I'm going to suggest is there's a difference between tenacity and stupidity. Stupidity is someone who's full of ego and not teachable. You'll never ever succeed or manifest the things that you want. But a person that is teachable surrenders their ego, and from time to time, yeah, it does hurt to hear certain things. But if you're open to it, you'll find that it'll make you bigger and expand who you are. You got to remember that if you want to expand what you have, you must expand who you are. And if you think small and you think in a way to eliminate people and to shrink your world and to shrink your influence, you'll never be successful.
And so if we consider the universal law of like attracts like, and you find yourself surrounded by critics or complainers, would there be a need for a little self-reflection in there?
You know what? I'm not sure that I entirely agree with the universe attracting like, attracts like. The universe helps you find what you need. And sometimes you're not aware of it. And the truth is, as soon as you get on a mission and you become deliberate and you become intentional and you become purposeful, the universe will bring you the things to help you fulfill your purpose. So it's not always like attracts like. And here's the other thing to remember about the universe that most people get wrong. The universe is an echo chamber. And so if you show up with hesitation, with fear, with doubt, with hesitation, with all these things, that's exactly what comes back. And if you're unclear on your purpose or your motives, that's exactly what comes back. But if you show up, again, intentionally, enthusiastically, with heavy commitment, the willing to do what you need to do to put in the effort, to put in, the universe then starts to open doors. So in other words, how you show up determines what shows up for you. And it's not always like attracts like. The universe gives you sometimes the lessons that you need, and it's nothing like you, but it's ready to expand you.
I definitely agree that the universe does give you what you need to grow and evolve. And it's interesting because I think as soon as you kind of tune in and create that desire and take some, whether it's physical action steps or emotional or mental steps, even you're not the same person as you were before you had that.
Yeah.
So the universe does always respond. I totally agree. So one of the other things that you said early on our conversation was that you had this idea for a movie and you got turned down a couple of times. So I think that it's really important for the listeners to know that they can make internal changes, and it's not always like instantaneous. Sometimes there is a little divine timing.
The truth is, and maybe I'll erase this so we can show something really kind of cool here. The truth is the universe will always give you what you need as quickly as you're able to receive it. That's it, right? So if you're not ready to receive, it's going to take time till it comes again. In fact, if we look at that title of the film, How Thoughts and Then Become Things, the interesting thing is there's kind of a line down the middle. Now, everybody's concerned about the thoughts. Am I thinking positively enough? Do I, am I afraid? How do I go overcome doubt and everything else? So our thoughts are there, and they're always at the top of our mind, right? The other thing is things. Everyone's thinking about things. I want a new house. I want the nice car. I want the nice clothes. I want the perfect relationship. Well, the truth of the matter is everything that you already want exists in some form or another. And even if it hasn't been invented, all the seeds to lead to that thing are also in existence. But this is not the side to focus on. This is not the most important one. The side over here is more important. And I'll explain what I mean. So how has a lot to do with how we really start to recognize and have awareness around our thoughts, how we begin to shape our thoughts, right? But the most important word is really this word of become. I love kind of what Jim Rohn once said. Jim Rohn said that if you win the lottery and you want to keep it, you need to learn to become a millionaire very fast. So in other words, there's certain things from a vibrational frequency, the things that you want, that until you become on that level, they can't manifest. And so how fast can they manifest? That's your original question. Well, as fast as you learn to become. You see, this idea of thoughts and things, most personal development teachers and things, they focus on, again, what you got to do to have, right? What do I have to do to have this? What's the checklist of getting these things? Time management, goal setting, all these kinds of things. But the thing that they forget is this idea of you have to be before you can do, before you can have. This is it. This is the most important. In fact, one of the things that I really like, my wife actually said this to me one day, but it made really sense. She said, you've heard the quote that says that actions speak louder than words, right?
Yeah.
Well, the truth is being speaks even louder than actions. And if we understand, like, the thing that's really valuable about this is sometimes we don't, as humans, we don't always do the right things. And we feel badly about it, right? Like our thoughts, they sometimes make us feel insecure or unworthy or guilty or challenged or perplexed because of what we do. But if we focus on becoming the right thing from the beginning, we'll notice that a lot of this gets taken care of. And even if we do the wrong thing, like just even think of people observing you, right? If you do the wrong things, but they know your motives and they know your heart, oftentimes they're also willing to forgive a lot of mistakes that you make, and they're willing to help you. That's why this principle of do, if we talk about fake it till you make it, that's such a bad idea. Fake it till you make it is a lie, because the truth of the matter is it's funny, hanging out with multi-billionaires and millionaires, the one thing that I observe is when they see someone who comes in and is faking it till they make it, they don't want to help that person. They don't want to teach that person because they know they're a fraud. And I believe that the universe feels the same way. If someone shows up and their intentions are not pure with what they do because they've not done the work with who they are, the universe also doesn't grant them and give them opportunities because they're a fraud. So we've got to recognize that the universe recognizes purity of being first, right? Very important.
And of course, we've all come here to be who we really are.
Yeah.
A lot of us are lost, and I wonder if you have any tips to help people to really tune into that beingness.
Their truest authenticity. Well, I think authenticity is an interesting thing because many people don't really understand even what it means. Most people take their cues on who they're going to be from all the external sources. So in other words, most times if you look, and you don't have to look far even to see this, but many people find their cues on who they are based on how many likes they're getting on Facebook, how many likes and subscribe, or who's following them, or who's approving them or validating them. And that's actually the wrong way to do it. In fact, there's a couple ways, and had we more time, we could talk more about this, but there's two formulas that I think are worth looking. One of them is called H squared. So in other words, H and H is what's close to home and what's close to your heart. So if we start with heart, what are the things that you really are excited about, that feel good to you, that lead you to become a more expanded, brilliant version of yourself, right? Rather than a duplicate of what someone else wants you to be. And the second part of home is, what are we naturally doing that we find valuable, right? What are we doing that already resonates with our truest values and our truest beliefs, right? And I think that's a really missed part of authenticity, is most people, again, are living a life that either they want to serve other people, or sometimes, let's give the other equation of that, is that sometimes they're trying to be so authentic that they're actually living from a place of selfishness, right? So you've got to understand that true authenticity means to also find validation in what you do. And like I said, this is a whole other discussion we could get into for another time, but most people don't understand that principle.
There were two processes.
Yeah, the other, I guess, if we were to, just kind of look at this for a second, I kind of love how it was described by Warren Buffett. But let's just say, right now, a lot of the gurus say you got to find your passion, your purpose, right? That's where you're going to be successful. But again, that's very, very selfish. And the thing that Warren Buffett once said, he said, what you love about you is your hobby. What others love about you is your business. And if you think about it, because we as humans are social creatures, our true authenticity is never something that we find alone. It's actually found in finding our tribe, or part of it is finding our tribe. So what we need to do is we need to find where our passion and purpose actually overlaps the passion and purpose of other people. And this is really the sweet spot in terms of authenticity. When we find a tribe or a community that has the same set of values as we do, then it's going to become manifest. It kind of reminds me of that quote that says your network equals your net worth, right? Everybody thinks about money, and that's fine, because money does come from that. And maybe just going full circle, this idea of the 5 people you surround yourself with. But it's not just, if we take that word net worth and we divide it into the 2 words that it really is, that word worth, worthwhile, worthy, right? Your network also equals your values, right? And so if we want to up-level kind of who we are and find our truest authenticity, we also have to find people that have the same values as us to nurture that authenticity. And if we try to find the authenticity by ourselves, it's often a selfish endeavor, and we're very rarely successful, because again, we need validation. As people, we need some sense of validation, because what do we say there? Life is like a heart machine, right? There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And if we're just trying to serve ourselves, when the up is there, okay, that might be all right. But when the down hits, if we're just trying to serve ourselves, that can lead to a lot of negativity, including depression. So we've got to be very careful about that.
Exactly. No man is an island, right?
True.
You have given us tons to think about, Doug, and not only think about, but to become more.
We've had fun.
We have. Would you like to share with the listeners how they could access your movie?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this movie is actually brilliant. We've got some amazing people in it that people like Bob Proctor and John DeMartini, John Ostroff, Marie Diamond, Bob Doyle, Dennis Waitley, and many others. So this is actually right now one of the coolest things that you can use as a tool, because the value that they shared, I think, is even beyond my own. So I'm really grateful for what they've shared in the film. And you can just head over to howthoughtsbecomethings.com right now. One of the things that's really cool about this movie is, in addition to seeing it, we've actually prepared some other goodies so it can actually be more of an experience. So right now, for a limited time, when you head over to howthoughtsbecomethings.com, you'll also get a workbook and a variety of other materials, and you'll have access even there to some of my other films as well. And it's a powerful journey. And I'm very, very, very proud to be part of this project.
Oh, fantastic. And thank you for coming on and exploring the mystical side of life with us. And thank you for listening to this week's episode. You will find us on YouTube, iTunes, Anchor.fm. Come and visit me at thoughtchange.com. And we'll see you again next time. Bye for now.